hereby call to order the regular meeting of the Crowley ISD Board of Trustees and certify that we're in compliance with the provisions of Section 551.041, Subchapter C, Government Code, as amended by the 73rd Legislature, pursuant to public notice of this meeting, and a quorum is present. I extend a warm welcome to everyone present for tonight's meeting. The monthly meetings of the board are open to the public, and we are pleased that you have joined us as we celebrate achievement, review information, and make policy decisions related to the effective operation of Crowley Public Schools. Comments or questions from the audience will be confined to the time designated for citizens to address the board. Decorum and courtesy are important elements in effective public meetings. Please silence your cell phones or communication devices before we begin our proceedings. Again, thank you for attending and for your interest in Crowley ISD schools. And now if you would please stand while Private Ortiz and the Crowley ISD Corps cadets present the colors.
Attention! Forward, march, colors, halt! Ma'am, request permission to present colors.
Permission granted.
Thank you, ma'am. Face. Present colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Carry colors. Right, face. Forward, march. Left, 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 right, right, left, left, left. Colors. Halt. File.
Okay, our first order of business tonight will be our board celebrations. Does a member have anything they'd like to share?
I do.
Ms. Benton?
I wanted to share that earlier this week, I was fortunate to be able to attend the new swearing in of the Student Government Association at TCC. And I was invited there by a previous Crowley student here, Karen Duarte Escobar. And she was being sworn in as the president of TCC Student Government Association, which was really neat. When I got there, I discovered that 1/3 of the Student Government Association that was being sworn in at TCC were Crowley students, Crowley High and North Crowley High graduates. So it was really exciting to see, and it really just is evident to me that we are turning out leaders, and it was just awesome to see that. So great for that.
Okay. Ms. Wiltshire? Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we will move on now to our report items for, Fort Worth Regional Science and Engineering Fair. Dr. Morales.
Yes, at this point, we will have Mr. Kirchner come forward and share with us some of the exciting reports that we have and some of the recognitions that we have today.
Thank Thank you, Ms. Davis, members of the board, and Dr. Linares. We are starting our celebrations and our reports tonight with the Fort Worth Regional Science and Engineering Fair. And this year, students from our STEM Academy at Sioux Crouch Intermediate School competed in this fair. I don't think it's ever happened before. Crowley IC sending students to this really competitive fair. And so our new STEM Academy sent students under the leadership of Mr. Brian Meekler. Principal Kamisha Stepinski's in the building somewhere.
There
They
she
took
is.
a great group of students. There she is. Well, this is Jessie Rutherford, and she's a 6th grader at the STEM Academy, and she rocked it at the Regional Science Fair and went on to represent Crowley IC at the State Fair. And her project, I can't even explain. Mr. Meekler, tell us about the project and tell us about the fair and what happened and how State went. Mr. Meekler?
Hi. This was a project that was given to me a challenge from Ms. Stepinski early in the school year. And in August, I contacted the people who were hosting the event, and they couldn't get us registered because they didn't recognize us as a school district. And then the first time they got us in, they put our school under Fort Worth. And so then I was like, no, and it went back and forth, many emails. I had to have them contact the admin building and go back and forth and exchange information. And finally, in January, so from August to January, we had not been given any okay to join the science fair. So in January, we finally got our okay, and we had 2 weeks to prepare. And so I approached all the STEM kids and I said, all right, who is up to the challenge? And a few of the kids there, I had 3 groups that made it. And of the 3 groups, Jessie's project made it through on 2 weeks notice, so she made 3rd in regional. I remember we were there from 7 in the morning, and it was 9 o'clock at night, and when they said her name, there was just shock over my whole body, and I turned, and her mother was like, oh my God. And there was just it was just so great to see her doing well. Then there was some confusion with them. They said that 1st and 2nd was the only ones to go to state, and then they came back and they said, no, it's actually 1st, 2nd, and 3rd. So then we had a short turnaround again to get ready for state. Once we went to state, we went, and there was just a huge intimidation thing as these judges come down on the escalator, one after the other. And I asked her afterwards what the most intimidating part was, and it really wasn't so much the whole thing of the science fair, but right next door was the Magic the Gathering tournament, and people were dressed strangely, to say the least, and she had to walk by there several times during this, and so that was pretty intimidating to be around that many people. But she did really, really well, and she finished top 10 in state in her division. It was 6th through 8th grade division, and she's just in 6th grade, so she's already working on her project for next year to represent Crowley at next year.
Jessie, can you tell us the name of your project this year?
My project was how much DNA in the cell per
And what's your project for next year? Do you know yet?
how much DNA.
They didn't say project. Well, it's a great project. It was very successful.
She's kind of downplaying it a little bit. Go ahead and tell them exactly what the comparisons were.
Okay, I'm comparing the C-value of amphibians and birds to the genomes of amphibians and birds.
So when she told me that, I had to get a book that didn't have a lot of pictures in it, and I did a lot of reading to make sure that I got all that caught up. So yeah, we're just super proud of you.
Well, congratulations, Jessie. Thank you for We're going to take a picture with Jessie, Ms. Stepinski, Mr. Meekler, everyone know about your great accomplishment. And Jessie, introduce your family that's here tonight. Would y'all please stand? Who you have?
The boot lady is my grandma. The tall,
Yep.
the tall man is my grandpa. The lady in the green shirt is my aunt. of people. And the lady is my mama, and then the person with the long fuse is my dad.
Awesome. Like this, let's go all the way down the road. Great job. Great job. Great job, Jesse. Our academic celebrations continue now with a great report on our academic all-state athletes. These are students that accomplish great things not only on the sports field or the basketball court, but also in the classroom. And so I have from Crowley High School Coach Chris James here to introduce his academic all-state athlete from the football team, Nick Flynn. Coach James, tell us about Nick Flynn.
What do you say about Nick? I've coached Nick for the past 4 years. I've coached his 3 older brothers since I started here back in 2010. Flynn's been the great people in this community, and they're certainly going to be missed. I had an opportunity to watch Nick practice his last practice at Crowley High School today, and tomorrow night we're going to play Burleson, and it's senior night, so it'll be his official last athletic event at Crowley High School, so it's bittersweet. I know it is for him. So, what do you say about Nick? 4-year starter on the baseball team, 2-year starter on the football team, all district in both sports. National Honor Society. He's taken over 20 AP classes. Member of the principal's leadership cabinet, and through all that, and other things that he does in Crowley as well. And through all that, he's maintained a 4.0 GPA. He's ranked number 4 in his class. He's going to play football and baseball at Boston College next fall. So Nick's done a lot, and we're very happy.
I think you had any family here, and he said yes, Mr. Gillies. Let's take a picture with Coach James and Nick and Mr. Gillies. All right, great job. And Nick, if you'll shake hands with our trustees, they'd have to congratulate you. Great job, man. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, Coach. All right, our next academic all-state athlete is also from Crowley High School. He's on the soccer team, Coley McCullough, with his coach, Blake Beck. Tell us about Coley and his accomplishments in the classroom and in the soccer field.
So, great kid, model student, spectacular in every which way. It's been an honor to coach him for 4 years. 4-year starter on varsity, 4-year letterman. Just phenomenal student. Always a great role model to all his teammates, to his peers, in the classroom and on the field. He's a captain for us for 2 years, but he was a leader far before he earned the captainship. Coley just overall has done everything that we've asked him to do and more. Top 5% in his class. He's signed to DBU to go play soccer and to continue on playing there. I can't say enough about this kid. He's just been great. He's also on the leadership council with Mr. Gillies, and he's one of those kids that you never have to worry about. He's always going to do what's right. He's always going to show up to practice on time. He's always going to tell his teammates, hey, I need you to do what you're supposed to do. He's always going to take care of his grades. He was one of those students that for 4 years, I knew he was going to start for me. So he got hurt this year, which was very unfortunate. But he handled it as a very good professional, and he was there to cheer on his teammates every single time that he had an opportunity to, even in his sling, which I was a little worried about for a short period of time. But we're very proud of Coley, everything that he did and all his accomplishments. Academic All-State in Tasco for Texas high school soccer coaches is very tough to get. And it's not based on a GPA. It's based on the 100-point scale. So Coley, he really, really, really has done an excellent job over his 4 years, and it is a cumulative grade score from day 1 to the day he currently is in right now. So it's just a great kid. I can't say enough about him, but that's all I have for you right now.
Congratulations, Coley. Here's your family stand. Thank you all for coming so much. And Mr. Gillings, let's come up and take a picture. Parents, if y'all want to get a picture as well, it's a chance to do it. Colby, where's the rest of your family?
Come on, Grandma, Grandpa.
There they are.
Okay. Let's squeeze in. Congratulations, Colby. Great job. Now for our final round of academic all-state athletes, these are North Crowley High School basketball players. Their coach, Coach Ott, they're making their way in. How are you all? Congratulations, Coach Ott. Tell us about these young ladies and their accomplishments on the court and in the classroom.
Glad to. This is I'll try to keep it short, but I can talk about these young ladies all day. I'll start off with Kylie Johnson over here on the very end. She's a 3-year letterman for our program. Just a phenomenal example of what a student athlete should be. She's going to continue her playing career at Hill College. She is being recognized today for Academic All-State. Academic All-State for TABC, which is an honor that goes to a student athlete that carried a 92 average in a 4-year career, which is a phenomenal. With Kylie, she was in our athlete program ever since she was in high school, and that's a very rigorous class that deals a lot with college readiness, as you all well know. So she had a lot on her plate for 3 years, so to be able to maintain the average is just outstanding, and she represented North Crowley in a fine way. So that was Kylie Johnson. Next up is Savannah Asher. Savannah is a young lady that took courses that I wouldn't even be able to pronounce. She is by far, in a way, would blow my mind with her academic prowess. It's just incredible. When I got her GPA from the counselor, I emailed them again and said, "Are you sure this is correct? Because I've got to send this to the state, and I want to make sure because this is awful high. I just want to make sure that this is correct." So she is just an outstanding young lady. She is in the midst right now of deciding her college choices. She's been leaning strongly towards Midwestern, but she has plenty of open doors. She was a student that approached me in the middle of this year and actually contemplated about stepping away from basketball because she was fearful that it would interfere with her academics, which is a very mature decision for a young lady to make as a senior in high school, but she chose to stick it out and was rewarded greatly, so we're very grateful for Savannah. Last up is Antoinette McNeil. Antoinette is literally my right arm. There's no doubt about it. She's been with me for 3 years as our student manager, and she was nominated and selected as the Texas Association of Basketball Coaches Student Assistant of the Year, which is a huge honor that goes to the student assistant that exemplifies every behavior of a body board manager. She was one that kept up with everything she did. She worked diligently on the weekends with laundry, with our assistant coach. She kept up with the equipment room. I never had to worry about if anything was loaded on the bus. She did our books on out-of-town games. There was nothing she couldn't do. I'm currently working with Steve F. Austin. She is accepted to Steve F. Austin. She'll be attending Steve F. Austin. Right now, I'm working on getting her a scholarship to be a manager on their program. At this time, the girls program is returning all their managers that are on scholarship, so it's kind of a little dicey, but they guarantee that if she would stick it out, she would definitely be able to get some money that second year. So we're just very grateful and very thankful for all of you for supporting us in this journey. Thank you all so much.
While we're getting their picture, any parents or family members, please stand so we can recognize you all and thank you for coming. Miss Allen, would you like to come in for this picture? Principal Allen's here. here one more time for our student athletes. All right. Congratulations, ladies. Great job. All right, our next report is exciting. It's one of our favorites of the year. It's for our Campus Teachers of the Year. And we know every campus in Crowley ISD is filled with wonderful educators. But this is that time of year where those campuses select the best of the best. These are campus-selected Teachers of the Year at their campus. And we're going to, obviously we have a ton of people. We're going to split it up. We're going to start with their elementary and intermediate. I'm going to ask all of our elementary and intermediate Teachers of the Year to come on in, and I'll introduce them when they're all in here. So good, come on in here. Y'all look right over here. Come on in. These are all of our elementary and intermediate Teachers of the Year. Y'all smell space over here. So we're going to go through pictures just so you can see their names and their schools. Jamie's going to drive here. From Oakmont Elementary, wave, Andrea Uso. From David L. Walker Intermediate, Florinda Aristurides. From Pointer Elementary School, Cindy H. Pointer, namesake is here in the room tonight. Amanda Fuller, Teacher of the Year. From J.A. Hargrave, Chantrice Harris. From Jackie Carden, Tweet Q Hong. From Sue Crouch Intermediate, Teresa Ihara. From Parkway Elementary, Krista King. Dallas Park Elementary, Jennifer Middleton. S.H. Crowley Intermediate School, Jeremy Shepard. Mary Harris Intermediate, Melissa Smith. And from Sycamore Elementary, Ben Travis. Meadow Creek, Alexis Tribble. Deer Creek, Gabriel Verone. And from Best Race Elementary School, Cindy Williamson. I also have Miss Klein up here from CLC, and her picture's in the next group, so she gets to say it here twice. So ladies and gentlemen, these are our elementary and intermediate Teachers of the Year. Let's hear it one more time for them. So, what we also get to do tonight is every year, in addition to every Campus Teacher of the Year, we have a District Teacher of the Year. One at the elementary level, which includes elementary and intermediate, and then one at the secondary level, which is middle school through high school. Tonight, for the first time, we're announcing who our elementary Teacher of the Year is. They completed essays, and they were judged by our DeWitt committee. And we're very proud to announce that our elementary Teacher of the Year for 16-17 is So what this means is Ms. Harris will represent Crowley ISD at the Region 11 competition. competition where all the districts in our region send their best teachers. So Ms. Harris is going to represent us there, and write some more essays. But it'll be worth it. We're just so proud of all of our teachers of the year, and Ms. Harris. We're so proud to have her represent Crowley ISD in that competition. What we'd like to do is let all of our teachers of the year shake hands with our trustees. They really want a chance to meet you. And then we'll take a picture with Dr. Linares, Ms. Davis, and Ms. Harris. All right? Follow me. Here.
Thank you, thank you. Thank you. Hey,
Ms. Harris, Dr. Linares. Thanks, sir.
Okay.
Don't go far, Ms. Harris. We're going to do secondary, then we'll do All right, let's introduce our secondary teachers of the year. Y'all come on in. All right, our secondary teachers of the year, congratulations. No guys in this group, right? All right. Well, we'll start with introductions. Jamie? From North Crowley High School, Christy Allen. From Crowley 9th grade, Rachel Allen. From Summer Creek Middle School, Julie Garibay. From the Bill R. Johnson CTE Center, Nicole Goodman. From the Crowley Learning Center, Renee Klein. From North Crowley 9th grade, Morgan Nowak. And from the Crowley Collegiate Academy, our first year to have a Teacher of the Year at our new academy, Meg Schussler. From H.F. Stevens Middle School, Faith Turner. And from Crowley High School, Holly Varley. And from Crowley Middle School, Malika Warren. So, our secondary teachers of the year for all of Crowley ISD. Let's hear them for these ladies one more time. Now we get to announce our secondary winner that will represent us at Region 11, and the winner is... each of you, and then Scarlett, would you come back for a picture? Congratulations again to all of our teachers of the year. Great job. Great job. Great job. Thank you. Okay, where's some trees? Over here.
Yeah. Here we go. There you go.
All right, family, friends. All right. Congratulations again. All right, our last report tonight is another fun one. It's our monthly Heartbeat Team Awards. We give out to our employees who represent the heart of Crowley ISD in all they do. This month's winner exemplifies Heartbeat because she's a nurse. She's a registered nurse that serves multiple campuses across our district. The Heartbeat winner for the month of April, Nurse Monica Brown. Show the video of our presentation for the Heartbeat Award. We're here for a very important presentation for our Heartbeat Award winner for the month of April. It's Nurse Monica Brown. Nurse Brown is the heartbeat of all of Crowley ISD. She serves multiple campuses. You get to know your students on a personal level, and you're able to provide our students with care that is above and beyond what is expected. One of the staff members who nominated you said that they've seen you stay behind and help students with homework, going above and beyond what's expected of you as a nurse. You have a great ability to investigate health concerns that others may not be aware of. Nurse Brown, you also take time to dig deep and find the needed answers to make sure that all of the students at your campuses are safe. You also work closely with parents and teachers to make sure that everyone is working together to keep children healthy. Monica Brown is truly an inspiration and a great role model for the entire CISD Health Services team, and she is the heartbeat of Crowley ISD. So congratulations.
I was not ready or expecting that at all. For somebody to take the time to say, this person deserves the Heartbeat Award, means that, one, people see what we are doing, two, it is effective, and three, it's made an impact in the district. So I'm just glad that what I do is recognized for making that impact in the lives of the students and staff in the district. I enjoy being a nurse just in general. So I'm a nurse here in the district as well as in the Air Force Reserves. So I'm a nurse. That's who I am. But when it comes to the students, some of the things that I do, I feel like I'm helping them more holistically. Yes, I do take care of their immediate healthcare needs, but if they need something outside of here, I like being a resource for them or being able to find those resources so that they can be overall successful.
Monica currently oversees 3 campuses. She oversees CMS, SH Crowley, and Best Race. Monica is always willing to teach. She's one of my lead CPR teachers. She's also great at teaching about diabetics. We have multiple diabetics in the district. She's always willing to help another staff member. She's always goes above and beyond for the children. Just her attitude, just her service heart. She's willing to help anybody, do anything. She has a different way that she can talk to children and let them know that they're safe and that she's willing to help them. And they know that. And they're always willing to come to her.
Every day I get a lot of rewards because every day I'm helping somebody resolve some type of issue. I mean, just yesterday I had a student that wouldn't speak to anyone, but because of the relationship I was able to form with him, he was able to get to me some kind of way what was wrong. I was able to figure out a solution for him, and he was able to successfully complete the rest of the school day. I saw him this morning, he was full of smiles and ready to go. So I'm getting a reward every day because I'm actually able to make a change every day for someone.
Let's hear it for Monica Brown. What stood out to me about Nurse Brown is she's not just a nurse serving the health needs, she's meeting the academic needs, the mental needs, the needs of the whole student and the entire staff. And so she's a vital part of our team, and she serves 3 campuses, and she leads the entire health team along with Paige Williams as a nurse. She's doing a great job. Keep up the great work. We're so proud of her. Introduce your family.
Hi, my husband would stand up. That's my husband, Tony Brown. My son, who you did see in the video, Tony Brown. And my daughter, Ivory Brown.
Okay, we will move now to our consent agenda. Are there any, does a member have an item to be removed or any questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just gonna make a motion.
Oh, okay. I did just have like, just a few questions about, okay. And nothing major, just in reading some of the policies, my computer's not where I'll let you read it. See it. I guess I just had questions about like regulations as far as, one of those policies specifically spoke to the superintendent will determine, recruitment strategies, hiring strategies, things of that nature. And just in comparison to maybe our comparison districts, I saw like regulations in different districts that we don't necessarily have. So I was just kind of wondering, where do we have those guidelines? Are they in a manual somewhere? Just with even regards to something as simple as postings. How long do we post our jobs? How long are they open? Things of that nature. Just procedural things, nothing major. I just had an inquiry about where
Okay.
those policies.
And you're probably talking about DC, which is the employment policies and practices. We do have our recruiting and hiring procedures that are held within our HR department. Ms. Kohler has all of those outlined in regulations and in also in practices. We can provide those to the board if you'd like to see them, and we will continue to update them as far as regarding like how long is something posted, how long is it, when is it open, when is it a pool, all of those kind of things. We have regulations and we can provide that to the board. That is done administratively.
And then the other thing would be what's been CDC local with the gifts and solicitation.
Yes.
The last part that addresses crowdfunding.
Yes.
I think it's just a
Is it
clerical
the-
thing. It's the very last section.
The
of
web-based
that.
funding?
Yes, web-based solicitation.
Uh-huh.
I don't believe it should have a number 1. I think it's just another section, like the solicitation section above it.
Okay, so in other words, just remove the,
Yeah.
okay. We will make those accommodations.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented, with, any of the, changes suggested by Ms. Hall.
Okay, we have a motion by Ms. Hall. Is there a second?
I'll second.
I'm sorry, a motion by Mr. Ray. A motion by Mr. Ray. Is there a second? Yes. A second by Mr. Franklin. Move to vote, please.
Title C, it's from the top, it's sync. It's sync. Mia, yeah.
Yeah, hers is,
Give me one.
Can I
well, she
switch?
had to she had to log in, because hers was frozen.
It syncs, but it's not the right spot. Just go.
Okay, now she's
View agenda. Maybe it wasn't the computer. We're on 5.1.
Okay. Okay. Everybody has voted accepting? Okay. The motion carries unanimously. Okay, we'll move now to our discussion items. 2016-2017 budget update and preliminary 2017-2018 budget review. Dr. Lenox.
Yes, Ms. Adrian is here to give the budget update and our preliminary budget review, which we give at every of our board meetings, every one of our board meetings. Ms. Adrian?
Thank you, Dr. Norris. Members of the board, just smiling to this next week. I just want to point out that for 2016, 2017, if you'll pull this worksheet out, last summer in June when we approved the budget, we had a balanced budget, but we went ahead and approved raises as well. And so we were assuming we would hit the fund balance by $2.5 million. But the third column on the worksheet shows for 2016-17 projected year end. Our revenues came in a little bit higher by $1.2 million, and our budget expenses was a little bit lower by 1.8 million. So that third column next to the green column shows that I do believe we will come out $456,000 in the black instead of the red. Preliminary, that looks very good. And then in the green column, that is the preliminary budget for 2017-2018. That's assuming a 10% growth in our TAD values, assuming 188 increase. But that's bare bones, no additional positions and no raises at this point. So we're supposed to get the TAD values by Monday. So we will be able to give you an update on these numbers May 11th or at the general meeting, whichever.
And what we're looking at right now, board members, is not only being able to get the TAG values, which don't come in until we assume Monday or Tuesday of next week. We're also waiting to see what happens with the legislature, which come the month of May, we will know a little bit more about the funding formulas and what the House and the Senate are doing. And so by the end of May, we should have a much better idea of where we are. But we do want to thank staff and congratulate staff for getting the work done and trying to be as fiscally responsible as possible to try and make up for the 2.5 deficit budget that was passed last year. And they've done a great job. So to all of the staff, thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions?
I just have one question. I know in previous years, I thought we always carried a capital outlay of so many thousands, zero for the proposed budget. Is there a particular reason why it's projected to be zero?
Yes, to balance the budget. Right now it's zero. Usually we have vehicles in there, maintenance equipment. Right now I did take those out because we want to put them back in, but right now just to balance the budget, I removed them. I've already had that discussion with Mr. Reeves. But I hope I can add that back in because we have a good, maintenance vehicle and now we're starting on our district-wide vehicles as well, trying to keep a newer.
We want to make sure that we keep a lifespan regulation as to when are we going to be buying them. And one of the reasons also was that we were saying what we want to do is we want to actually take a look at the ages of the vehicles that we have, determine our need, so that we have, definitely we need what type of vehicle we need, when we need it, and for what purposes we need it. And then we will put it into the budget based on the need of the district.
Thank you.
This is just preliminary though.
I understand. No, I'm just curious. That's the first time I've seen zero, that's why I was asking.
Yeah. Yeah.
Usually, okay, thank you.
And I just, one quickly, what was the increase in, the tax base last year, you know? 10% seems, I mean, I know values.
It was
I
like
haven't seen-
17%.
Oh, it really?
Yeah, it was a nice increase last year, but
In revenue?
just the base.
The
base.
tax
Yeah,
base?
Yes,
But then, okay, then with the homestead caps and everything, it was not quite, okay.
right, right.
So, all right.
But we really didn't want to project based on that because we felt that the 17% was high. It was an anomaly there, so.
Right. Okay, I was just.
Can you give us any insight on that, yes?
I haven't looked at Tanner and Crowley ISD really to. I can pull the data real quick.
No, that's okay.
Anyway.
We'll have our tag values Monday or Tuesday.
But we'll continue to update this as, next couple months, we'll give you updates on board meetings.
Thank you, Ms.
Great,
Adrian.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a discussion item, so, we'll see it again next
Mhm.
month. Our next item, investment policy review. Dr. Lenoir.
Our investment policy review, we will also be hearing from Ms. Adrian, who has prepared our investment policy review for this board meeting as well.
Thank you. I did not change anything from last year. The resolution, I added a line item for the resolution just to follow what we have in policy. Just to point out that the superintendent or designee is, I forgot what it said, is one of the investment officers anyway. But that's all I changed was that one line item on the resolution. And I changed it so it follows our policy.
Okay,
Are there any other questions?
questions, comments? Okay, our next discussion item, regional day school program for the DEF shared services agreement.
Board members, as you know, Crowley ISD serves as the fiscal agent for the Crowley Regional Day School Program for the Deaf. We have member districts for 17-18, which are included in your packet. They include many of the districts that we share with them. This year, Crowley will remain as the fiscal agent as well as the district of accountability. And we wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to review the shared services agreement. We will bring that back next board meeting for approval.
Okay, any questions, comments? Our next item, 2017-2018 Education Service Center, Region 11, Crowley ISD renewal contract summary and master and local agreement.
Board members, as you see in your agenda packet, you will see the copy of the proposed renewal contract for the 17-18 school year with Region 11. We do many things and utilize the services of Region 11 in many aspects. We have taken, if you'll notice in the addendum, there are a couple of increases to that. I met with the executive director of Region 11 to determine the need for those increases, and I promise you everything is up to par with the amount of services that we receive from them. So this will come back at the next board meeting for your approval, but Region 11 is a very integral part of the services that we provide in our district.
Comments, questions?
Are there any alternatives to the TEACS resource system that we considered?
Yes, and I do believe that after you get the curriculum audit tonight, you will know that as a district, it is something that we will be reviewing as well as far as our curriculum management system and the curriculum that we'll be looking at for Crowley ISD. So while we have this in there for next year, as they move towards modifications, improvements in the curriculum, we feel like there has to be something that we need to keep in place while we continue to look at other options for our curriculum management system.
Okay.
And Dr. Prophet, I'm sure will have more to say about that.
Okay. Other questions, comments? Okay, we will move now to our consideration and possible action items. Sid W. Richardson Foundation grant donation to Crowley Independent School District. Dr. Lamont.
Yes, board members, prior to approval of the update 107, any donation that was given to the board was required to have approval by the board. We have modified that in update 107. However, because that was voted on earlier, we wanted to make sure we had it in here. The bottom line is the Sid Richardson Foundation has been extremely generous in being able to provide for us a grant of $10,000 so that we may have a principal leadership conference this summer, and that we would be able to conduct the entire 2-day conference without utilizing any of our school district budgets. And so we want to say thank you to the Sid Richardson Foundation, Pete Guerin and Ed Bass and the entire board for allowing us to be given this $10,000 donation, and we seek your approval for it.
I don't know if you want to ask if there are any objections. Any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
Yeah, I recommend acceptance of the grant award from the Sid W. Richards Foundation to Crowley ISD in the amount of $10,000.
We have a motion by Mr. Franklin. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Ms. Hall. Move to vote, please. The motion carries unanimously. Our next item, District of Innovation TEA submission. Dr. Lamont.
Yes, so Crowley ISD, as you know, has been approved as a District of Innovation. We have had our teams working on the plan regarding the Districts of Innovation. The notification has been accepted with no further recommendations by the state. The final step is this step, and that is for us to ratify the final plan. So we seek your approval to ratify the final plan for the District of Innovation.
Okay. What are the plans?
Okay.
Going forward for the District of Innovation?
Teresa, would you like to address that? I know that, or Anthony,
I would love to address that.
you're gonna pass it over? If you have anything to add afterwards, I'm sure he'll let you.
So I have the honor to serve on that committee alongside Mr. Ray, Mr. Garcia, Ms. Hall, and Ms. Berry, who's unable to be here tonight. She's traveling for work. So the first part of the district's plan for the innovation was to fast track the calendar. Got that done. So last week, I believe, the committee met together again to just explore next steps, because there's a lot you can do under district innovation. And they wanted to fast track the calendar part. So now they've reconvened and they've split into different groups based on different areas, looking at certifications, contracts, whole host of issues. And so there are going to be subcommittees meeting together regularly. It's a committee that's made up of not only the board members I mentioned and a couple of central office administrators. We also have several teachers, campus administrators, and also community members serving on that committee. And so now our plan is to take a little more time to really look at it and explore which exemptions could possibly benefit Crowley ISD. So we don't know what those are yet, but we have just started the process of exploring them.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, and if you didn't know, there is a bill in the legislature right now to not allow us to do this, so let's get it done first.
Yep.
Okay, is there a motion?
I move to approve, to ratify the final District of Innovation Plan as written.
We have a motion by Mr. Ray. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Ms. Hall. Move to vote, please. The motion carries unanimously. Our next item, potential naming of the Summer Creek Middle School Gymnasium. Dr.
Yes, board members, at the last meeting, and March 30th meeting, you had students and staff come and present a proposal to name the gymnasium at their campus, the Luther Pierce Gymnasium. He was a longtime janitor at the school who helped open the campus in 2008. They brought you the proposal, and we are recommending that you approve the naming of the gymnasium at Summer Creek Middle School, the Luther Pierce Gymnasium.
Okay, questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the naming of the gymnasium at Summer Creek Middle School, the Luther Pierce Gymnasium.
We have a motion by Ms. Hall. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Ms. Benton. Move to vote, please. The motion carries unanimously. I had a footnote to the motion we just made. We're very honored to name the gymnasium at Summer Creek Middle School in honor of Mr. Luther Pierce. However, the policy of naming future facilities is currently under review by the board, and we will refrain from naming further facilities until we are able to adopt a new policy. Thank you. Okay, our next item, food service vendor contract, renewal. Dr. Linares.
Yes. Board members, as you know, we are completing year 2 of our second 5-year agreement with Aramark to provide district-wide child nutrition services. Our partnership, as you see, began in the 2010-11 school year with our first 5-year contract. We are recommending the approval of the renewal. We have found that our services have been very, very good with Aramark, and we are recommending the renewal. I will say that there is the guaranteed return to the district this year, I believe, went up a little bit. And would you like to address that, Dwayne or Randy?
Yes, ma'am. The return last year was $900,000, and you'll see there it's $962,265. So it did have a slight increase. So, and as the bullets there also are, we always try to put a portion of that back into the program. So some of those things there are just a few of the items that we partner with Aramark with to enhance the cafeteria areas and just to increase participation and just different things like that. So.
We recommend approval of the renewal contract.
Okay, any questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I recommend approval of the renewal contract for Aramark to provide district-wide child nutrition services for the 2017-18 school year.
We have a motion by Ms. Benton. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Mr. Franklin. Move to vote, please. He's working on that. Let's just vote by show of hands. All in favor?
Gary, is your hand raised?
The motion carries unanimously. Our next item, congratulations, Aramark.
Congratulations, and thank you for the good work you do.
Okay, our next item, addition of district-wide automotive technology at CHS. Dr. Linares.
Yes, board members, as you know, we had a presentation at the last board meeting regarding the automotive program at CHS. We presented the proposal last time, and along with the design or the floor plan of what would be used. You'll notice that the estimated construction cost is $482,856, which will be paid using the capital bond funds. What we did to make sure that you were fully aware in the proposal was to not only provide for you year 1 costs regarding this program, but also the estimated cost for year one and of course year two, which would then give you the total cost of the program so that you would know what you would need to be budgeting for the next, for the forward years, the next couple of years. This will be paid out of bond funds. It will also be paid out of Perkins funds for materials and so forth. But you have the full estimated program, and also in your packet, you have the floor plan, and we are recommending the approval of the automotive technology program at Crowley High School.
Okay, comments or questions? Mr. Rossi?
Are we able to get a sponsor of any sort to help us with this?
Well, I will tell you that a lot of times you're able to do that. Once you have approval for it, you will find some sponsors who may actually, if not do the actual capital aspect of it, but maybe some of the materials and some of the machinery that's needed, because there is a lot of different machinery needed. And we will be out seeking those funds for additional utilization at the automotive technology once we get it approved.
Other questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I recommend approval of the project to add automotive technology at Crowley High School as presented.
We have a motion by Ms. Benton. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
A second by Mr. Ray. Move to vote, please. Motion carries unanimously. Our final consideration and possible action item, 2017-2018 professional staff contracts.
Board members, you were given some additional professional staff contracts. These are contracts, some for probationary teachers, others for some that were not brought to our attention until a little bit later. We're asking that we approve the professional staff contracts at this point in time so that we can have everybody contracted and ready for the next school year.
Questions or comments? Is there a motion?
I make a motion that we recommend approval of the 2017-18 professional staff contracts as presented.
We have a motion by Ms. Hall. Is there a second? A second by Mr. Gracia. Move to vote, please. Motion carries unanimously. We will move now to the curriculum audit presentation, 2016-2017 curriculum audit. Dr. Lenard.
Yes, first of all, as we begin the curriculum audit, I would like to compliment the board for having this done. Anytime a school district requests a curriculum audit, it means that you are willing to take a look at yourselves and say, how can we do our jobs better? And so the district embarked on a curriculum audit, and so tonight, Dr. Profit is here to explain the results of that curriculum audit. You have before you a copy of the PowerPoint presentation along with the findings and recommendations that we will be giving. So again, I do ask that, compliment the board for seeking this out. It provides a wonderful roadmap for where you want to go and how you want to make improvements to the district. So at this point, I will turn it over to Dr. Profit. Dr. Profit, thank you for being here. I know that it's difficult in the state that your foot is in, but we appreciate you taking the time and being here for us.
I have to commend the Crowley Independent School District. You took some of the words out of my mouth, because I do want to commend this board, because it was the board that brought forth the recognition for the curriculum audit, because you want this district to go forward and to be better. So that is commendable. And we also want to recognize the fact that here in Crowley Independent School District, there's a tremendous amount of talent. And we know that you want to use that talent in the best way for your students. And so the team that we put together as we went through this, I'm the lead auditor. This is my 35th audit. I have been in, I think, 19 different states now doing audits. Penny Gray is from California. Penny's been on numerous audits as well. David Luthmeyer has been
associate superintendents, curriculum directors, assessment directors, principals. We all have educational experience, and 2 of us have business experience as well. So your team was a pretty diverse team, also a very experienced team. Joanne Pasteur, with David Luke Myers from Florida. David has been a superintendent in Arizona as well as California. Joanne Pasteur comes from Michigan, and she's in Georgia right now. Actually, she's coming back from the South Pacific, where she just did a tour for the past month of the islands and things. And Sue Van Hooser is one of your own Texans. She's here. She was our Texas member of the team. It doesn't make any difference what team you put together. They still come together and do a great job. The standards, we have 5 standards that we look at in this audit. We look at control, and control, I'll do a little more definition as we move into this, to the actual findings and things. But control is talking about the governance. It's talking about the policies. It's talking about your organizational structure. It's talking about how you go forth in planning. So control is what we call the first standard, because that standard sets the top of the pyramid, and then you go on from there. Direction is the standard that we look at to see what direction does this district give to the classroom teachers, to the school administrators, and to the community in terms of what the curriculum and the outcomes for students are going to be. So we specifically look at that as well. Connectivity and equity is our 3rd standard. And in connectivity and equity, one of the things we look for there is to see across your district, are things, smooth in terms of articulation, vertically from preschool all the way to high school, and then as well as horizontally. Are all of the elementary schools, if wherever the child goes, are things connected at elementary or middle or intermediate or high school? Equity is not just being about equal. It means, are we looking at the resources and greatest needs, and how do you monitor equity within this district? Feedback, a lot of people use assessment as feedback. We look at data. It's not just about testing. It's about all kinds of data, and you'll find that you'll get a lot of information in the report. Productivity is the 5th standard, and that's everything else in your district, because everything else combines to make the first 4 work. And so that's why that one's a productivity standard. I do want to say that our data sources came from your own district documents. We did interviews in the actual report itself. We actually talk about who we interviewed. We interviewed administrators, principals, teachers, community members. We did surveys and had tremendous response on surveys from teachers and parents and folks, and giving us information. And then we visited every school in the district. We visited over 400 classrooms, and you'll see that data put forth in the report. I do want to share with you that this report is 500 pages. It's a lengthy report when you do get it. It's still in an edit process at this point, but you will be receiving, or the superintendent will be receiving the full by the end of the next week. But I'm going to share the highlights of this as we go forth. And one of the things that I wanted you to be aware of is that as we chose the things that we put into the audit, the auditors all have a specific technical expertise. We have experiences in school districts and school systems across all the levels. And the second thing is that we have to follow the principle of independence. In other words, not a single one of the auditors had a vested interest in any specific finding or any of the recommendations that come from this audit. That's a principle that we have to adhere to. Objectivity, we have to triangulate. We can't just listen to somebody say something and put that in the audit and say, oh, this is fact. We have everything that is contained within the audit is triangulated. And that's what our quality reviewer looks at. The quality review that it has undergone 500 pages is a huge audit. This is the largest audit to date from the company. They've all been talked in terms of the fact that we went very, very in depth and did a lot of demonstration of understanding. But everything that we put into the audit was material to this district. It had some kind of point to be made to Crowley, and so that you understood the points that were to be made. And then full disclosure, you will see in the appendix, we give you a list of every document that we reviewed. If we did any kind of data charts or anything, underneath them, we tell you where the source comes from, so that we do give you full disclosure in that. So those are the principles in which we adhere to. The audit process itself is a very structured process. It is an intensive examination of the functions within an entire school system. And I think it's very important that it is your system that's the unit of analysis. We're not looking at Texas, we're not looking at any other place. We're looking at your system as the unit of analysis. We're not looking at just one of your schools. We're looking, because you want to see the district as a whole, your school system as a whole. And curriculum, we have to keep in mind, is never delivered in a vacuum by itself. It's processed within your school system. Everything that's inherent in your school system contributes to that curriculum delivery. Your facilities, your budget, your human resources, your teachers, your resources, your professional development, your assessment process, your recognitions, everything is tied to the curriculum. So that is never an isolated factor. And that's why, some people were saying, well, why would you be interested in facilities or maintenance? You're talking about curriculum. Well, they are designed to help your curriculum be delivered in the manner in which it needs to be. If facilities are deficit, or too cold or too hot, then that impacts the delivery of curriculum. So it's not an isolated piece. The other thing that's important is that our team, the lens that we use to look at your district is through the board policies, your local goals, and our audit standards, our 5 standards that I just talked to you about. And that's the lens. We're looking at your district through those pieces, and that's how the team is functioning. So you are actually, whatever you set out as your goals and your objectives, that's what we look at, because that's what you have agreed on as your legal entity. The core of a curriculum audit is the connection between the written curriculum, the taught curriculum, and the tested curriculum. There must be a connection between what happens in the writing, the documents that we use in curriculum, what happens in those classrooms in terms of delivery, and the assessment. And those have to be tightly connected and give feedback both ways to each other so that you have control of it. If anything is separate, you don't have real control of it. And that's why we look at the pieces as we go together. And so that's what we call quality control. As a district, you want to bring into congruence the written, the taught, and tested. If the written is here and it's done separate from the teaching that goes on in the classroom, and that's separate from the assessments, you've got 3 isolated systems. Those are, and you want to bring those. The more incongruence those can be brought, the tighter control. You have the tighter quality control, and that connects to student achievement. That's where you really get connection. And it can also impact that accountability that you have as a school board. You're accountable to your community for student learning and student achievement. And the tighter those things are, the more in control that you have of the quality of that system. What we want people to understand is that when we talk about doing better, we don't mean adding more. A lot of people think that when you get something like this report back, we gotta do more. We gotta find more programs, we gotta find more people, we gotta find more money, and that's not necessarily what we're emphasizing. Becoming more effective throwing yourself out so thin that you can just give a little bit to each thing, then you're not in quality control. And the other thing is you want to go deep. When you have so many things in place and you're strung so thinly, then you're not being able to go very deep. You give just a little bit to each other. And we can think of our own personal agendas that way. You know, many times we get involved in so many things that we don't get to give quality time to anything. So what we want to talk about is less and deeper as a result of the curriculum audit. And that becomes then what you're looking at. You're instead of broadening the scope of your curriculum, you want to lessen the scope, but you want to go deeper. And so what this means is you want to focus and you want to reduce in some kind of strategic process and plan the initiatives, the programs, the methods, and the curriculum. And when you deepen that, when you get deeper and it's deeper in alignment as opposed to being spread so thin, you will get more results in terms of student achievement. This picture just shows you that when you do look at the curriculum depth, what's getting tested from our states, what's being required and mandated federally as well as statewide, will be included, but you want to make sure it's included in what you're specifically doing, and that's what that written top tested is about. Now, you're not teaching the test, there's no way we can, because the test is always changing. What you're teaching is to the concepts that the students need. And if you teach those concepts deeply to where the students understand them and can apply them in a lot of different ways, as opposed to just getting a little bit of this and a little bit of this and a little bit of this, they don't remember any of that. But if you go deep with it, you're going to be guaranteed greater achievement. And so that's what we're talking about with this process. Now, I do want to emphasize that this is an exception report. And what that means is it's a gap analysis. Here's where you say you want to be. And so we look at everything you have, and here's where we find you. And so your findings are talking about that gap. And the recommendations that we give you are from the experiences that we have from working with other districts. We make recommendations on things that you can give consideration to move, to close that gap, okay? But we do want to emphasize, so that it's not misunderstood, that this is not intended to be a critical report. It's simply a factual report reflecting back to you where you want to be and where you are, okay? And that's not negative. That's positive, and that's where you're to be commended. Because you've asked for that, and now this hopefully will give you a roadmap and some a methodology in which you can move forward. One thing I do want you to understand is we don't compare you to other districts in this. You won't find us comparing you to any of the regional districts or anything. We simply compare you to yourself. So all your data is compared to you. When we do the assessment in finding 4, we do use some state data because you obviously have to look at your state data and do some comparisons there, but we don't compare you to anyone else but yourself with that. We find, given those, you have findings and you have recommendations, and I'm going to go through the findings first. And for those findings, we turn around then and give you recommendations, okay? Some of the findings are much longer and more in depth than others, but you hopefully will get a lot of information from it. Now, as far as the board does not have to approve this audit. We don't ask you to do that. You're just accepting an audit and things. You don't have to approve anything. What you do want to do is you want to ask your superintendent and the leadership team to look at the audit, to take it apart, to look at it, and to take those recommendations and pieces and bring some kind of plan and discussion to you, so that you can then deal with it as a part of what you will work on. So your role is to really look at effective policies, because you lead by your directing and those policies that you design. You also want to monitor the implementations of these policies. You direct policy, those policies are setting forth what you expect to have happening in the district. And then publicity, and so anything can go, and so you get whatever that happens as a result of that. So that's why you do want to have a stronger policy. I worked for the Kentucky School Boards Association for 10 years, so I'm very familiar with how our associations and TAS develop policies and procedures and what we give to districts. Our legal policies are simply keep you in compliance with law, so those are just you adopt those. But what we recommend in terms of local policy is just simply our best thoughts. You need to tweak it and make it fit you. And so the expectation is that you don't just adopt our local policy, that you do something with it, that you make it fit the expectations you want here in Crowley. Absent that, you're just doing helter-skelter kinds of stuff, you know? And the TAS doesn't tell you what to do in Crowley. They just give you a format, some ideas to look at, so put some meat to it. And that's the concept you need to be thinking about. That's where you establish all your relationships and things like that. If you don't have the policy, and this is where you've picked up, because during our interviews with you, sometimes you're naysaying or disapproving, or there's nitpicking in the back end of decisions. You don't have anything to make a decision on, and so there's a little bit of discourse there. So that's why you do want some definitive policy as you go forward. The board and the superintendent are co-partners in what's called meta management. And in that meta management, policy comes from the board. The operations is the responsibility of the superintendent. And in our discussions with all of you, it's our feeling that you all understand that very well. But it is so important that you somehow give the guidance to the operational side about what you expect. And that is the piece that we want to emphasize for board direction, is that piece. So, if you look at the work that's going to be done, the overall goals, you set goals through planning, which we're going to talk about, creating priorities. You're already talking budget. Remember, and we're going to talk in terms of some of our findings about how critical it is that you have a plan that puts forth over time what you hope to accomplish, and how you budget toward those ends. And whatever your all's goals and focus is what gets communicated to the community. If we spend money on this as opposed to really having good discussion about what's happening within our curriculum and within our schools, using those data pieces that we have available to us and making those decisions and putting that in. And so you've got to come up with good work plans. And we're going to talk to you about the planning process and the importance of that. And then scheduling. See, the board actually puts forth the timelines. You know, when do we want this to be done? So as you're doing your budget, you certainly talk with the operations side to find out their impact on that, but you want to help set those timelines. What do we want to accomplish this year versus next year versus the next year, so that we get to where we want to be. And then it's very important that the board expect evaluation and reports to you in terms of what's happening, the questions that you ask, that there is transparency, responsible to execute the board policy and make sure that we get where the board has given us the guidance to go. And the superintendent, of course, manages the managers and makes sure that things, and is accountable then for the results, and that's part of how you hold the superintendent accountable, is for those things. So as we quickly move into standard one, which is control, these are things that we look for in control. Do you have a centrally defined and board-adopted curriculum? Do you have a clear set of policies that permit accountability, that reflect the state requirements, and do you use achievement data to improve the operations of the district? Do you have a functional administrative structure that facilitates that design and delivery of the curriculum? We also are looking for a direct, uninterrupted line of authority from the board, the superintendent, to the principals, to the teachers. It's very important that that line be uninterrupted. If you put other positions, if you put support positions in the middle of a line authority, support and line are two separate things. You know, line authority is that direct to the classroom. That's the impact to the classroom. Board expectations to the superintendent, to the principals, to the teachers, so that there's not any confusion going on. Your organizational development, you want to make sure that as you're getting data, as you're doing accountability, that you're getting what you need to look at the effectiveness of your operations and your system as a whole. And do you have the data that you need for plans and mission and attainment? And do you know how to make change? Are you getting some data there somewhere that talks to you in terms of when are we needing to make change? How are we planning for that? What's the innovation process within our system? And as you all were talking earlier about your innovation plan, this report is going to give you some things to give consideration to as you go about that whole movement to district innovation and your innovation plan. I've spent 6 years working with districts, understanding how we have been very traditional. And so how do you have to go through that change process to innovation, because it is a real change process. And there's some discomfort level when people go through change. So, working through that. So we had 3 findings in this control standard. The first one is that we found that board policies and the administrative regulations did not provide for adequate quality control for effective management of the curriculum and the district functions. You have some very general statements, but they're not specific enough to ensure that you're going to have quality control of what happens with your curriculum. Some of the specific kinds of things is that assigning role responsibilities in your policy. You have some general statements that the superintendent is, overall the whole thing, but we didn't get into is the expectation that we would have specific responsibilities for principals, for administrative staff within some kind of job descriptions that give them role responsibilities and planning. Also, how is the curriculum to be implemented? How is it to be, what's the time allocations? When do we expect curriculum to be reviewed? What kinds of reports need to come back to No, we don't expect you all to write the curriculum, but in terms of what's the process in the board adoption. The directions for teachers is very elusive. There's really nothing that says the teachers are to teach the curriculum. You know, so that's kind of the deficit area. If I choose to teach whatever I want to, I really am okay in your district. So you wanna look at your local policies. Remember, it's the local policies where you wanna put some guidance on that. The productivity in terms of what you would expect from curriculum and the impact of curriculum and curriculum changes was either not there or it was very, very weak in the statement. And allocations of resources, basing that on a needs base was not evident. You know, it's kind of like we just hand money out. Somebody says they need something, so we kind of do that. And one of the things you want to think about is how are we going to allocate the resources to support the curriculum. When we get into standard 2, we're going to talk about a little more specific information. This is just a little more about the curriculum. I've talked about a couple of these already. You expect written curriculum, but you don't talk about any monitoring or implementation. So if you expect something to be written, you do want it to be implemented and monitored. So again, if you expect people to invest time in doing things, you want to find something that assists them in supporting the implementation and monitoring of it. The deep alignment of content, context, and cognition is very important. Remember earlier I said that you don't want to go broad, you want to go deep. Well, that issue of deep means that if you don't talk about the deep alignment of content, context, and cognition, you can have all these thousands of courses, all these thousands of different modules and teachings and things, but everybody gets a little bit of something, but there's no real flavor to it, it's not deep enough, and there's no mastery of learning. And that mastery of learning is what happens. Your context is instead of just teaching things one way, it's very important that in the curriculum, there's many ways in which teachers can present the information so that it gets to the real life situation, that it gets to the application, so that when a student is taking a test, it's something that they can adapt to and not just say, oh, I was never introduced to this, I don't know how to do this. And that's what context means. It means giving it to them not just in a multiple choice or a true false or a fill in the blank, but that we give them some thinking, some critical thinking skills. And cognition, you're going to find in standard 3 when we talk about cognition, you do have some statements in board policy that say that you want students to get to the deepest level of understanding, and that would be deeper cognition. But if students are only asked to memorize and then move on, or they're only asked to identify things and move on, you're not getting deep enough, and they forget it for the next day. It's like the parents who practice the spelling test the night before, and the day of the test they've forgotten it already. Or a student who memorizes to take a test on Friday, and by next week he's never heard of it again. So you want to get mastery. So that's what that cognition is about, getting onto those deepest levels. Your philosophy, you really in board policy need to talk about, are we about mastery of curriculum? Are we about what is it we want in our philosophy? There's no board adoption of curriculum, but you have board adoption of instructional materials. And it's interesting because materials are to support the curriculum. So if you don't adopt the curriculum, it's very interesting that you adopt materials. So you want to look at those and make sure those things move together. And the job descriptions that you receive from TAS have a wonderful format to them. They have the pieces that you would want to describe. But unfortunately, the way that those come out is many people have the same task listed in them. So we're not sure where the buck stops or who's really in charge on that. So that's one of those things you will see that we will make a recommendation about. The next part talks about reviewing curriculum and resources. There's no cycle of review. And this is something that concerns your teachers because they don't know when math is going to be reviewed again, or they don't know when social studies will be reviewed, or they don't know when. And then all of a sudden it might be, oh, okay, this is the year we're going to change everything for you. ESL programs, and gifted programs, and Title I programs are all there as support programs to the delivery of the general curriculum. They're not there to be separate entities and things like that. And so you, as a policy, you want to make statements regarding how those are there to support and align with, as opposed to replace. It's that issue of it's not replacing, it's support. And then your staff development, you've got a lot of statements about staff development, but there's nothing that's rigorous enough to talk about how that relates to curriculum delivery on that. And this just goes into more different types of policies that we looked at. You have policy on many of these things. It's strengthening the policy that you have in local policy. For instance, you have policy on assessment, but you want to talk about what is formative assessment. What do we consider as formative assessment? We talk a lot about formative and summative assessments. We talk about state assessments. We use these terms, but we don't define how that meets the curriculum. How does it fit? What do we expect from it? And how's it going to help us with our student achievement? And you have a lot of policy on use of assessment, but it almost conflicts with each other. So you want to take a look at and put all of that maybe in one place as you're looking at that. There's nothing that asks teachers to track students and to see if the students are mastering the curriculum. We want to think about teachers doing that as a profession, but not everybody will do it if it's not a requirement and if it's not monitored. The reports that you have in policy are more compliance reports as opposed to really giving you the information to make some decisions about programs. And the other one is deals with budgeting, and we'll talk about this a lot in Standard 5. But you need information that you're collecting from your budgeting process that collects information about the cost effectiveness of programs. And you don't have any policies that talk about, do we know if things are cost effective? And so if there's not anything is that an expectation that you have? Do you expect it to be that way? So that's one of those other pieces in policies. Next one talks about a multi-year process. We know you change it each year, but looking down the road, because things are changing, 5 years ago happened, let's get over it and let's move on. Let's move into now that we can use data, and I think some of you were talking about what does our data tell us about potential enrollment, potential growth, and things like that. And you want to use that information. Many people have community people that deal with that come in and look at those long-term things as you're even doing your budget process. And it's real important to connect your budget process to the delivery of your curriculum and your instruction as it being being a separate process. A lot of times it's not unusual for school districts to have the budget process kind of separate from everything else. But if you're designing a strategic plan and you have certain things you want to have accomplished, that needs to be very tightly connected and budgeted and based on data.
Dr. Prophet?
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I have a quick question just to make sure that I understand. When we're using the term policy for 1.1, that's board policy, also like administrative regulations or handbooks or anything that's like a written, this is how we do it?
That gives guidance.
Okay.
This is what we're going to do in this district.
So it includes all of those things would be under the word policy.
Right.
Okay.
And I think the confusion in your district is you have legal policy, you have local policy, and you have administrative regulations, and then you have handbooks. And the issue is your local policy is really your administrative regulations. It's how we do things in this district and what we expect. Legal is the legal. You just adopt those. You don't have to really redesign those. But in the legal, you want to look to see, does it give us what we want? Does it have the need that's going to help us be accountable within the district?
Okay.
But it also includes handbooks, and we did look at handbooks as we were looking at these things to see, is there anything in a teacher's handbook that talks about teaching the curriculum? And we didn't see anything there. Your teacher's handbooks basically just copy your one talks about institutionalization of change. A lot of change is occurring within your district, and it's done in a variety of ways. And if you don't have a process for change that you want to talk about within the district, and you're going to see this particularly as we talk about in Finding Five, where we talk about all these interventions and different programs that people come up with, they're doing that in a kind of a change way. And if you don't have a process for that, or if you don't have an institutionalized way in which we're going to be a change, you will find it be competitive or competing, or it may just be disjointed, and you may not get what you need from it. So it can be fragmenting your district as opposed to, you do want to look at how we're going to go about change in our district. And that has a lot to do with your district of innovation. You're talking about change there as you move forward in that. So when we're looking at governance, we also looked at your board agendas, and we went through your board meetings, and you'll see in that we talk in terms of what did we see in the board agenda in terms of topics and time and things like that. You'll see that we actually counted some of them for over a year. I think it was 18 months and things like that. I've already noted just for tonight that you've already made some changes on stuff in the way in which you discuss and talk about things. But basically, from the process when we were here, we found that your relationships as a board are very professional. You're very ethical in how you relate to each other. You respect each other. The curriculum expectations when we were here were weak on the part of the board because you kind of just left that to somebody else. And so, but the board has to set the high expectations for curriculum. And it was indicated to us that you wanted those, but you weren't sure how to go about it. So that's why we came back with some recommendations for how to do that. And so you don't intrude into management. That's very clear. You basically left the management alone, and I think that was some of the concerns. And I think as a part of that, it kind of diluted some of the accountability because you wanted to be very clear that you were trying to deal with policy and not management, which is good. But you have to also realize that that's where you get into it. So we did review your board minutes, and we found that a number of finance and business items come to your attendance. Your board business, where you appoint board members, you have people that report, people who have gone to conferences and meetings, your board minutes, those kinds of things. You had presentations and reports to the board, but we really didn't see, this is where some of the curriculum stuff came in, is we would see presentations, but not really discussions or a lot of questions and answers. It's like, okay, so they presented it to us. And I think that one of the things that we heard you express is that you really wanted that last one where you want some real discussion and some decision making in terms of the programs and the curriculum. Finding 1.2 goes beyond policy. It goes into your table of organization and job descriptions. And we have some principles that we look at for tables of organizations. We look at the scalar relationships. We look at how the people are grouped in terms of management. We look at the hierarchical relationships. We look at the line authority and all of those kinds of things. And one of the things that we found, and you will see this in that, is that we did the analysis on the old table of organization, but it was way out of whack on a lot of the management practices for an organization. Many of you shared with us some of the concerns about those, about the way things were related. And that's where there wasn't a great deal of separation of line and staff. Things, could be very lopsided. You could have people with a job title and then a lot of responsibilities that didn't make sense under the job title and things like that. So that's where we get into the table of organization and then in the job descriptions. Your job descriptions, because of the format TAS has, they do have identified the components that you need in a job description. But what we found is that lots of things were just repeated, and there wasn't clarity then about who does what. So that's one of the pieces that we started looking at. And then finding 1.3 talks talks about planning, and we found a lot of planning going on. We found that you have a district improvement plan, that you have a strategic plan, that you have a technology plan, that you have campus improvement plans. So you have lots of different kinds of plans. What we wanted to look at is to see how do all those plans drive the district. Now, interestingly enough, all of the plans use the 5 same goals, but the activities and the focus under each of those were disjointed. So even though you were focused on the same 5 goals, everybody's going in every direction under those 5 goals. We actually tabulated for you your district improvement plan and how many sub-objectives and activities you had in the campus improvement plans the same way, and actually came up with lots of numbers of how many different types of activities, and the problem with a lot of those they were activities which did not lend themselves well to evaluation to say, did we accomplish anything with our plans? The best thing you had going for you was your plan for learning format, which did put everything into the system, but people didn't take it as seriously, and I mean, they were very honest about it, saying, yep, we got a great format, we put stuff in there, and our data, connects to it, and we put that in there, and then we look at it quarterly, and we put a little check in if we're going along the way, but they were saying, basically, we're not serious about if we're accomplishing a whole lot with this, and some of the data that was being used in your plan for learning would not effectively measure those activities. And in many of the plans, they designated positions, and there would be like 10 people, in positions responsible for an activity, but who's on first? Who's responsible for it? So one of the things we found is that they're loosely connected, they're not tied. And so if you really want to accomplish some student achievement here and you want to get something done, then your plans have to be tightly connected. And you don't need thousands of activities, you don't need thousands of things going on. People can do things differently but be focused on the same kind of activity. And you'll get more achievement accomplished when you're focusing that way. So I have 3 recommendations coming out of your control. And this is a separate piece of paper for you, but our first one is to review, revise, adopt, and implement board policy for this curriculum management control. And we're talking about local policies and administrative regulations there. We're not talking about the legal policies. We're talking about those local ones. Look at those, and we know you review them, but it's just like a good question you asked tonight, Ms. Hall. You ask about, well, where is this? What does this mean? And that's the kind of discussion you need. Is this going to get us where we need to go? Does it really say that? And if you have a question, then out in the district, people would interpret it differently too. So it has to be very clear, very succinct, and very specific to say, here's what we want to have happen. So that's the first recommendation. And the second one deals, and you've already started on this one, and I was delighted to see in the actual report you get back, you will find that we suggested a table of organization that you might want to give consideration to. We did that separate from the one I saw today, and it's very interesting in how common they were in terms of organization. So, and you want to put job descriptions in place. A lot of folks told us when we were interviewing, here's your job description, is this what you do? And they would say, that's my job description, but that's not really what I do. And so job descriptions need to be reviewed on some kind of basis, and they need to be reflective of what folks do, so that you know what people are doing. One thing that is to your credit is that your interim superintendent has already done the functions part of that, so that under this office, here are the functions, and then we can get into who's responsible for those kinds of things, and those are pieces that are very important. Otherwise, you have a great deal of confusion. You will see in the audit, in every single finding, we will mention policies, and we will actually state what the policy says, and then we will give you job descriptions, and we'll show you exactly the those are the kinds of pieces that you will see on that one. And then the last recommendation deals with your planning. Just ensure that you've got a system in place, and that you know, when you have your campus improvement plans coming forth, you want to really have some kind of system in place to where you're checking that to make sure it links to where you're headed as your district, and that we're not driving in a lot of different directions. So that, and even as they're being developed, you know, having the common template is good, but you also want to have some kind of systemic way in which you're using data to drive that, so that we're all focusing in the same direction. You have a district strategic plan, and you have a technology plan, and you have, of course, the other improvement plans. And the technology plan had a lot of great stuff in it, but very seldom did we see connections between the campus improvement plans and the technology plan, which is very important, because if you're spending dollars on technology, you want to ensure that what we want to do with that gets implemented in the campus plans as well, and that it connects to student achievement. So that's where all of those planning pieces come together. And by the way, you have, I think of some of the principals I interviewed, I'd say you have 3 very strong principals who understand planning. They really do understand what the whole process is, and they were the ones who said, I put that in there, but that's not what I use. Here's what I use. And they would show us a system that they are using within their school that is connecting the pieces. And those are the ones where we saw more use of technology. That's where we saw more drive towards student achievement. That's where we saw true PLCs and things like that. So it's an important piece. If you're going to ask people to take time to do it, ensure that they understand where it's going to get them. Any questions on that? We're going to give you lots of time at the end, because all of these pieces work together. Standard 2 is the direction, and now Standard 2, I probably won't go, I will give you some overviews of it, but I won't go as in depth as I did with Standard 1, because Standard 1 is more of your control. You set the stage for 2, 3, 4, and 5, okay? And Standard 2 is the direction, and that's where we're looking at your curriculum. Do you have a system-wide set of goals and objectives that you adopt as a board of trustees that addresses all the programs and all the courses? And when we talk about all the programs and all the courses, we're talking about what's happening with core and non-core, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But we're looking at curriculum management planning. We're looking at how do you use best practices or high leverage practices in your curriculum trends. Do you have written curriculum that addresses not just current needs but also future needs? Because we know there's data out there that's telling us what's happening with students. And how do you connect programs to that? And how do you change, what's the process for curriculum change? So finding 2.1 simply says that you don't really have a comprehensive curriculum management plan. And we're not talking about just curriculum. You've got documents out there all over the place. But what's your plan for all this to come together? How is it developed? How is it implemented? How are people trained? How is it reviewed? What's the cycle? How do the resources connect to that? What are the different persons' responsibility? Who is involved in it? All those pieces. And without that plan, people can't really tell you how curriculum is designed in the district. They'll say, well, so-and-so, they'll tell you the curriculum coordinators write the assessments, and they'll tell you that the special ed department provides resources for special ed, but they can't tell you how things come and go. So that curriculum management plan is important, and then your community also understands it, and then that roles and responsibilities. Finding 2.2 is scope. What we look for in scope is for every single course or every single subject area that's taught at every grade level across the district. Is there a written document that the teacher can use to teach that area? For instance, at the elementary level, if they're teaching ELA and they're teaching math and they're teaching social studies and they're teaching science, are there documents at grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, grade 4 something there? At this point, we don't value, we don't judge the quality of it, we just say, is there something there? If they have a syllabus, we'll count a syllabus, okay? So what you're gonna find is that, for all the core, which are the four basic areas of English language arts, math, reading, the science and social studies, at the elementary, the pre-K through grade 6, we look for 100%, and it was there. There's some written document at those levels. At the non-core, and the non-core are all those other areas. It could be a computer class, it could be PE, it could be music, it could be art, it could be anything else that is offered to elementary students. Then at the elementary level, we look for 70% curriculum, and it was there. So the scope at that point for the elementary pre-K through 6 met the criteria. The scope for middle school, the core, for those big 4 core areas, it was inadequate. And these are your areas of English language arts, math, science, and social studies. You didn't have the 100% in all of those grade levels at the middle school. It was adequate in non-core. So we did meet 70% at the non-core level. The high school level, it was inadequate in both, which means at the high school you have a lot of courses that count for English language arts. You have a lot of diverse courses that count for math credits. You have a lot of diverse courses that count for science credits, and all of them did not have a written curriculum. So the scope was inadequate there for both the core and the non-core. And in the actual document you get, we will actually list everything. It'll be pages and pages, but we will actually list it and show you where it is and where it was vacant, where there wasn't anything. When you take pre-K all the way through 12th grade, you had inadequacy in your scope of written curriculum for everything, for core and non-core. But that's where you add elementary, middle school, intermediate, and high school all together, and the average, of course, brought it down. But we do separate it out and show you where those areas are. Now that's just is it there? Now we're saying, is it any good? And in the quality, what we do is we have 5 criteria that we look at. We took the core areas only in this one. And we looked at those documents to say, did the documents have measurable objectives? Did the documents have for each measurable objective something that was suggested for assessment? And then we looked to see, did it talk about what prerequisite skills, what did they need to know before they got to that objective and the connection? We looked to see what were their suggested resources. And then we looked at were there suggested strategies for differentiation in diverse groups of students. And we score that from 0 to 3. Okay, if nothing's there, it's a 0. If everything's very specific, it's a 3, and you'll see the criteria that we give you. And basically, what we found is across all of the curricula that we looked at, it was basically inadequate. Some of them were less than 1. You get like a 0.9 in some of them. Some of the highest things that we found is that because of your benchmark assessments that are being written, that was one of the higher areas. It scored a 2 out of 3 in many of the areas. So you do have some things to build on there, but you do want to look at what's going to happen in terms of guiding the guidance for teachers. And the reason this is so important is if those components aren't there in some kind of consistent manner, then there's no insurance that you're going to have mastery of learning for the students. So we look at that and give you that definition. In finding 2.4 and 2.4 and 2.5, 2.4 we actually take the assessments that are written and we look at the objectives and we look at the alignment, and we actually give you some samples out of reading and science and math and actually give you the item, and we talk about, is it topologically aligned, in other words, do the words just kind of match, or is it deeply aligned, which means that content, context, and cognition are deep. And basically, the district assessments aren't designed in content, context, and cognition deeply enough in order to ensure that you're gonna have that student achievement that you need. Which is why in Standard 4, you're gonna see why you're stagnant in your scores. If you stay topologically aligned, you're gonna get to a certain level and stay there. It's not until you get deeply aligned that you're going to start moving. So that's why we actually gave you some very specific things. The other thing we did in this standard, which is unusual, we don't usually always do this, but we took the resources because your supplemental programs used resources. The EL classes and the special ed classes used a lot of resources to replace the curriculum. And that's what they were teaching in the classrooms that we went into. So we actually took those and we looked at the alignment of those to see, is that going to help those students close the gaps? Is that going to be aligned enough to get them into the general curriculum? And it's not. And you're going to see that we gave you those examples again so that you could see specifically from your own materials what's happening there. And then in Standard 5, then we look at the design of all your supplemental programs. We look at the design of how special education, bilingual education, and I don't have on there, but gifted education. And we talk about how those programs are designed to be delivered. And then we look to see, is that adequate to just support those students in mastering the general ed curriculum? Are they going to get there? And basically, that design is not strong enough to help those students master that curriculum at this point. And we also looked at the professional development offered to those teachers to see, do they understand how to use those resources to make it to, align it to the general curriculum so that they're designing strategies and helping the students get there. And we're finding that did not help the students. The current professional development was not designed to help those students lessen that gap. It's not going to close the gap at this point. And so recommendation 4 is a lengthy recommendation. You will find when you actually get the report that it's I think about 10 pages in length. It gets very specific because it's talking about getting that management plan into place, and we give you some guidelines on that. We talk about some very specific designs on how to make a curriculum rigorous and things. Now, I do want you to understand, we're not saying pick up and redo everything in the curriculum. There's some things, and that's why you want to use the report, because there's some things that are okay. You may need to tweak them, but there's some things that are okay. There are others that you're really going to need to spend some time on, and that's where the recommendations kind of focus you, is where do you need to be working with the superintendent and spending time. And some of that will have some budget implications as the superintendent brings back the plan on how they want to work through this. Standard 3 gets into connectivity and equity. What we're looking for with connectivity is we look at horizontal articulation, which is from elementary schools, from grade level to grade level, are things connected. And then we also look at vertical, for the students who go through the school district, from pre-kindergarten to elementary to intermediate to middle to high school. Is there a spiraling of the curriculum so that the students are getting there? And we connected this particularly to your data in Standard 4 on feedback, and your data shows that kids start off pretty good in some of the elementaries and then they start dropping. And that's where, again, your scores get stagnant and things. So that's one of those articulation pieces we want to look at. But we want to see, do you have the curriculum delineated such that you can have that continuous design? And are your professional development programs enhancing the curriculum design? And is it monitored? And what's the teacher and administrative responsiveness to policies? So in finding 3.1, we found some inequity and inequalities and inequities. Inequalities mean that things aren't distributed equally across the board. Inequities mean the kids who need the most may not be getting it. You know, if you just make everything equal, then some students aren't going to make it. And one of the things that we try to point out in Standard 3 as well as it connecting to 2 and 4 is the the students who are low SES, who really need direct teacher instruction, may be receiving program here, program here, program here, program here. They may be getting software, remedial work, and no teaching. And that's an inequity because they're not getting what they really need. So that's the kind of thing we point out here. One of the things that we do point out is that when you're looking at admission into certain programs, such as the gifted program, the criteria and the students who are taking advanced placements in the gifted programs, there's an inequity in African American students according to your population within the district being in those programs. We also looked at the discipline data, and we found that the same population received an overabundance of disciplinary referrals. You'll also find that we looked at some of your subgroups, and some of your special education students have an inordinate amount of disciplinary kinds of referrals. Now, you've got some good programs that are starting to address that, which is good. But just be aware that that is considered something that would impede students' achievement. And the other piece that you want to look at with the disciplinary pieces is in your student support. Sometimes you send students to programs, alternative schools, and they may stay there. And do you have a process for them to enter back in to the general curriculum, or is it we're moving them one way and it's not a two-way street? So you want to think about those, because that can be considered an inequity for those kinds of students if the programs aren't 100% equal. And all alternative programs are support programs again. They're support programs to help kids gain those skills they need so that they can then function back in the general curriculum, general society. So you have to think as well about that. We found that policy that you had dealt more just on compliance kinds of issues. You need to look at your local administrative regulations on what you consider equity and how you want to address some of those equity issues. You have gap groups in our finding standard 4. We actually show you data that's called years to parity, and it's how long would it take this group, if this is the standard group, this is the groups that's achieving over time, and we take the subgroup of special education students, and if we just stay doing the same things that we're doing right now, how long would it take us to get that to parity? Never. And so we give you several, and we take the ELL, we take the different populations and show you that data so that you can look at it and make some decisions about so we can look at in 2.5 how we're delivering those programs. So what might we need to be doing differently because we're not going to make it just doing the exact same things year after year. Professional development. This finding basically talks about that you do have a lot of professional development offered in the district. You have school professional development, you have professional learning communities, you have departments that offer professional development, you have positions within the district that do professional development in terms of mentoring teachers and those pieces. But one of the things is there's not a clear path and pattern and monitoring of what are we getting for all that professional development. Is it making a difference in the instructional process? So you need an evaluation process and you need a long-range plan. Do we want to do the same things year after year after year? Or do we want to make a plan that this year we want to focus on this and move in this direction? It's not wrong because most of the nation right now is going to more personalized professional learning. And that's great. Just be sure you have some kind of definitive plan on how that's going to operate. And then, do you monitor and evaluate it? I think that's the key. One of the things we look for is we took a list of all the professional development that was going on, and we kind of looked to see, do we see that in the classrooms anywhere? Do we see evidences of it? And, you won't necessarily see it every day, but we didn't to see always evidences that that professional development that had maybe just happened was occurring. And even the teachers and principals would say, we loved it, but we don't have time to come back and do it. So you have to look at how we're going to do that. And the third part of this one is the instructional strategies and the student achievement. Basically, we look to see what did you say that your expectations were. We used a lot of the T-tests and just different things like that to look to see. What we found is that the instructional strategies, you will see charts that talk about when we went into the classrooms, what were the students doing, what were the teachers doing, what was the cognition level of the work of the students, and what was the cognition level of the instruction that was going on in the classroom. And for the most part, we found that you talked about the fact that you expected higher levels of cognition and deeper levels of knowledge and understanding. We found it to be very low instruction, even in the AP classes. So you want to take a look at that data. That doesn't mean we didn't find some good instances. We did see some good ones. But overall, it was, it wasn't as much. We saw a lot of large group instruction, all students receiving the exact same instruction. And we saw all students doing the exact same work regardless of what their achievement level was. So that did not match exactly what you indicated you wanted to see given your curriculum and given your policies. And then the monitoring, we asked principals and we asked district administrators what the monitoring process was, and you do use the T-test process, but we found that it really doesn't focus on that curriculum delivery and instructional process in terms of giving feedback to teachers to assist them in improving the instruction in their classroom. It doesn't, when you're talking about curriculum delivery, it doesn't have to be teacher evaluation. It needs to be support and mentoring to the teachers as well. So another thing to look at is that process. So in recommendation 6, we do make a recommendation and some very specific kinds of things about looking at instructional delivery, how you would make that, when you're looking at the diverse student population that you have in this district, how do you have a focused means of monitoring to ensure that your district expectations are being met. We also talked about how to develop some kind of short-term and long-range strategies to eliminate those disparities and inequities in student learning. It's going to be very important because you're not going to close those gaps for your subgroups if we don't look at that. And those disparities can get greater instead of lesser. So it's just something that's very important. And then, of course, we make a recommendation about your professional development. And you're already working on some of these things. You're already trying to pull these things into place. So, it was really interesting, and I made the observation to your leadership team earlier, that when we were asking questions and trying to find out what the processes were, we'd ask a question and people go, no, we don't do that, but we should. And then we come back and find out they're doing it already. So it's great because it's not that they don't want to do it, it's just that maybe they haven't thought about it, or they thought about it, but just didn't, I guess, feel they had permission to do it or whatever. But a lot of things were already starting to happen on some of these pieces. Quickly, we have 2 more. Standard 4 is feedback, and I'm not going to go deep into feedback because when you read this one, this piece alone has a lot of charts in it and has a lot of tables in it because we're giving you the assessment data, and we looked at trend data. We looked over 5 years of what was happening with different grade levels and different subject areas and different subgroups. And we actually have color-coded these and put these in bar graphs and line graphs and things for you to see, to say, here's what's happening with what you have in place. And, of course, then that recommendation connects back to Standard 2, which says what you have in place isn't meeting the needs of all the kids. You will also see in this one, you have a great board policy about program evaluation, the expectation for it, but there's very little of it that comes back to you. How do you evaluate programs? There's a lot of initiatives and ideas and things going on, but the student data is not necessarily what you use for program evaluation, because classrooms, I can tell you if the teaching strategies and things are connecting to a program. So I think this one's just, how do you provide feedback to the teachers, and what databases do you use? You have several databases in your district, and finding 4.1 says you don't have a comprehensive student assessment and program evaluation plan. Just like in Standard 2, you don't have a curriculum plan. In Standard 4, when we asked for your assessment and program evaluation plan, we got a calendar of when you give assessments. And that's okay, but it doesn't tell me anything about why do we give these assessments, how are they given, how are they going to be used, which group of students are going to receive them. So in this particular finding, we were looking for how do you put that together to make sense of it. And then when we look at the scope, you're going to find in 4.2, we actually give you pictures of at what grade level are certain students being given what tests, what are all the tests that you give, and at what grade level are they given, what group of students get them. And we actually even identify for you all the special education tests that are given to different special ed students, and all the ELL tests that are given to kids, the gifted tests that are given to kids. We take the regular population and we show you where STAR is given and all these other things, and then say to you, where's the rhyme and reason, and how are you using this data? And so that one is one that has a lot of pictures to it. And obviously we talk about, you've got a lot of assessment going on, so your scope of assessment is okay at the intermediate and middle school levels, but you may not be getting at the high school level because not all courses are assessed. So at the high school level, you're getting only the end of course assessments that are already developed. How do you know what's happening in all the others? So that's the kind of piece you get. 4.3, this is where I was talking about the different charts you're going to look at. We actually look at your students' performance data, and it is you've been staying at this level. It's not moving. You get a little tweak, and then it'll be back down, and then a little. It's stagnant, and everybody's saying, "What can we do?" They're all wanting to look at that. And we also look, and it's consistently below state and national averages. So we want something to happen. And we noticed that the sub-gap groups, when we did those years to parity, most of them are not going to close in the near future if you're doing what you're doing. Now that's why you need program evaluation, and that's why you need systems, because people have a hard time knowing what to give up. And you can't just keep adding on. Remember we talked about, we're not talking about broader, we're talking about less and deeper. So you're going to have something in place that helps make that decision. And that's a piece of how you can use data to do that, but it's not currently being used that way. And that's what finding 4.4 tells you, is that the use of data for decision making it's happening, but there really isn't any real one approach that's giving you the data to look at the programs and the approaches and helping you make decisions about what to keep, what to add, what to lose. Because in Standard 5, we're going to talk about the fact that we have lots of interventions and things going on. What do you give up? How much do you know what you're getting for each of these interventions and things? So that's how you're going to have to use your data in some way. So the recommendation behind that, it seems pretty long. It's 3 or 4 pages in length, but it basically says, be sure that when you're using your benchmark assessments, that it's not just about putting a score in, or it's not just about giving an assessment, or it's not just about having somebody design one and you have to give it at this point in time. Make sure it has a use and that it's giving feedback in terms of curricular decisions about how we're meeting the needs of different kids. A lot of times the scores come back and that same group of students aren't successful, but we move on. So is that what we wanted to do? So that's where the recommendation is coming in. And your last standard, believe it or not, is productivity. And this is where we look at financial data, we look at facilities, we look at all those support systems that you have, we look at interventions, we look at a lot of different things. And basically 5.1 we say, hey, your district budget's in good shape. Your audits tell you that you have no deficits, no discrepancies or anything like that. But the missing piece is you don't have a cost-benefit analysis of expenditures so that you know what you're getting. If you're putting this much money into a school of choice, what kind of outcomes are we getting from that? If we put $400,000 into a program, what are we doing for measurement to see that that investment is well worth that investment? Do we pilot programs and collect some kind of data in terms of the benefit analysis of to see is this meaningful? And I'm going to give you the example I gave the leadership team today. Reading Recovery is a nationally, internationally recognized wonderful program. It costs about $50,000 a teacher each year to support that program. But we have wonderful data that says that the year that those kids are in those programs, and each of those teachers only serves between 10 and 15 students only at $50,000 a year minimum. That's training and stuff. It's great that year. Those kids make wonderful progress. We've got data that says that. So then the kids are only in that program 1 year. They go back to regular programs the second year and the third year. And what we found is by the third year, they're back down to 0. So that's what you want to do with the cost-benefit analysis. Wonderful program, great research behind it, but you can't just put a program in place without thinking about what you're going to do behind it to sustain whatever it is that it's taking for that student to learn. So when you're looking at some of the programs that you school of choice and those kinds of things, wonderful stuff out there. Some of them are very expensive, but you want to be sure you put into something in place that helps you with your budget. Because otherwise you get competing endeavors trying to go on. And it's hard for me when I am the director of a program to be honest with you and say, this cost us a lot and we get this much for it. Whereas if you did this, you probably would get this much for it. It's hard for me to do that in an unbiased way. So you need to put a system in place that does that for you. And you've got data that'll help you do that. It's like, it's just something that you need to think about so that you get maximum productivity for the budget that you have. If we had unlimited amount of funds, it'd be wonderful, but it's just not there. And this is basically what you do in business. If pizza isn't gonna grow, darn it, we don't keep doing the same pizza. It's gonna die on the vine and things like that. In my state, we used to be the tobacco state, we're not a tobacco state anymore. We're bourbon, bourbon and beer, because you can use grain the same way, So that's what you look at. You have to look at the cost benefit analysis. Tobacco wasn't going to get us anywhere. So. Finding 2 was your instructional technology, and I want to tell you that you've got instructional devices out there in your district. You've got them. You've got you've got some of the best technology we've seen in any district. You've got a good infrastructure. Unfortunately, what happened is it's not connected tightly to the instructional use. The teachers and the principals, it's not tied into what's happening in the classrooms. In this particular section, we actually observed in the classrooms, and we took data on every classroom we went in to see, are the students using technology? Are the teachers using technology? And then we have a model called SAMR, and we tell you when the teachers are using it, what are they using it as? Are they substituting it? Instead of using a book, they're just showing the page up on the board. If they used to use overheads, are they using a smart board just to put the overhead up there now? Or are they using it in an interactive way where kids are very actively engaged, which is the perfect use of smart boards. And so you're going to see data that says to us, a lot of students, if the students were using it, it was for practice, remedial practice. A lot of software remedial practice as opposed to them researching and learning and getting excited and engaged in learning. But the tools are there, they just weren't being used necessarily that way. The teachers mostly used a lot of your smart boards. I think it's almost 90% of them were using the smart boards as overheads. They were projecting up on top of the smart boards what they would typically be showing on an overhead or a arm. And a lot of it has to do with connecting back into instruction. And I was sharing with Mr. Allen, one of the key things is that we have to use technology and we have to model it for teachers And teacher preparation programs, that's one of the things that's not happening. They're not being prepared in how to do this. And so when they come out, all they know is how to use it functionally. I mean, put kids on remedial programs and that, they go through those and we keep the scores. But make them interactive and engaging. Kids, it was just like the idea of when they first, watch a 2-year-old use an iPhone. I mean, they know how to do that. They actually show me how to correct stuff. I've got a 3-year-old grandnephew that shows me how to use my iPhone. So they will use technology and they will learn from it. I mean, the first thing he says is, he'll come in and, hey, Nick, can I do this? And he goes in and I've got the ABCs and the matchings and things like that. And he said the other day, he said, I know that, I need some new ones. So, I mean, how do you get, and he stays engaged. Otherwise, his attention span is very short. He'll sit for hours on end, as long as it's a learning activity. But he gets tired of coloring activities and things like that. So, it needs to be a tool for student learning. And that's one of the pieces that, we make a recommendation about, is the design for instructional technology. Finding 5.3 talks about interventions. We have a list for you in lots of different ways of all the interventions that schools reported. We had the campuses each tell us what they were doing to do different things and which groups and what monies they were using. You've got lots and lots of things going on, but there's no rhyme or reason on how they start, how they end, who plans it, what day is being capped, is it being measured. And we do take one, the positive behavior intervention system, and it was a well-designed system that is being used as a district system. And we use that as an example of here's how one could be done, so that when ideas are brought to the board or brought to principals or to superintendents or leadership group, this is a process you could use to help them think through, is this something that's going to work for this group of students? Or is it just something I saw in a school I visited and I thought it'd be nice for us to do? You can spend a lot of money doing those nice things and maybe not get what you needed. And so the recommendations talks about building your multi-year financial planning system, and you're looking at that, how do you align your budget to curriculum goals and priorities? How start thinking about that cost-benefit analysis to help you as you move forward, especially as you go into your district of innovation. Having worked with some districts and looking at that, if you have not lots of new monies and there's not grant monies, and I think our federal government's cutting back a lot more on grant monies now, we're going to have to think about what are we going to do to make that happen. And 10 talks about how do you implement, monitor, and devise a system of interventions and innovations and things, and what's our plan for that. So the report, again, comes in 2 parts. You get your findings and then you get your recommendations. And at the end of every one of those recommendations, we tell you, we put the recommendations in a priority order. Number 1 would be something we would talk about starting on initially, but you don't have to finish 1 to get to 2, okay? And we put a planning timeline in there that this recommendation needs to be implemented and completed within the next so many months or years or something along that line for you. And basically, the team wants to thank you. Gosh, your folks worked awfully hard giving us information. Literally, it was a 6-month process. You probably felt like it was 14 years, but it was a 6-month process so far. And you now have your databases. I mean, Ms. Allen can tell you, we requested data a lot of different ways and a lot of different documents that people haven't thought about looking at. So now you've got that in a place to look at so that you have it put together. But I can't tell you enough how talented you have some staff in this district. And we want to encourage you to look at this and to involve them with your superintendent in this process of implementing, designing and implementing this, and use that talent within your district. We all think that the expert's 50 miles away, but let me tell you, there's so many talent. You've got some principals that that darn well know a lot of good curriculum pieces. And they through their energy, sometimes they do things in silos because they want to do things, and it's not wrong. It may just be out of whack. So you want to use this and build on it and move together. And they need your support as a board. You need to listen. You need to ask questions. You need to feel very open and ask for reports about this. We allocated this kind of money toward an automotive program. Tell us how it's working. Give us some data. Show us how many students are going through it. What's happening to those students? Are they getting employed? You know, those kinds of things. And I think it's very important that you have the expectation of transparency. You know, we need to see, we need to know, because you're the decision makers in the district in terms of budget and the outcomes, and get held accountable. So, your time for, well, and I always like to use this. We can't create tomorrow's problems with today's thinking. We have to be, we have to, with yesterday's thinking rather, we've got to use new kinds of ways of doing some things. And yesterday's thinking wasn't bad. It just isn't going to get us through tomorrow. And you know that in business and things like that, we have to continually churn. So now your time for questions. I know it's been a long process for you.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Profit. You know, I will, just for the board's information, you also have a synopsis of the findings and the recommendations in your document. But I do want to thank you just on my behalf, just for what y'all have done. And I will leave it to the board to do their questions, but it is very intensive, the work that you did. Yet I do believe it provides a wonderful roadmap for the processes that the district needs to go through to make improvements to enhance student achievement. So I'll leave it up to the board for any questions. Davis?
Okay, are there, excuse me, any questions, comments?
You will get copies. You will get the 500-page document. And I expect you to spend an overnight reading. Actually, I broke my leg at the week that document was due. So I spent my week on the couch finishing that document. But you will get it. It will come into you, and like I said, the superintendent will receive it first to look for it, to see if we've had any glaring errors. If not, then it will just come to you. A lot of it is language that we don't expect. Like I said, we don't expect the board to address that, but you would say to the superintendent, take your leadership teams, involve your principals and teachers, and tell us what this means and how we're going to do something about it, and come up with a plan.
And we talked a little bit about that today, about, so what do you do when you have a 500-page document, and what is your first step? And so we talked a little bit about, once we get the document in, it really is time for the leadership team to take that, you know, get it into pieces, and then have a task force or ad hoc committees that will be able to take those pieces, including the leadership team and principals, and to really start digesting what it says and what does it really mean, and then from that piece, where do you begin to start addressing the issues? But it is massive, and so you really have to be able to take the time to not only read it and understand it, but to truly digest what does that mean for us, and then where do we move forward. So we were kind of talking about maybe a next steps, just, this was just a professional conversation of what do we kind of do from here.
And I offered to Dr. Lenora, since you don't have your document and it's not in the hands of your leadership teams yet, when they do start digesting it and things, I offered at no cost to your board opportunities for them to FaceTime, to Skype, to whatever with me, so that we can assist in any way we can with understanding the data or the document itself, so that it becomes understandable to them, so they can then make plans. And I lay that offer to you on the table. That's just a professional commitment I feel I have to make as a lead auditor.
Thank you.
And that was gonna be my question, where do we go from here and next steps? So, I guess.
Well, like I said, I think it's a lot to take in. I mean, when you do a presentation like this, it's a lot to take in just in what you've heard tonight. You have your documents to review them and so forth. But until we get the but 500-page document, you know, we're gonna really have to take some time to intensely divide that up and more, just, you know, peel the onion here and find out what it really means. So we will have a plan of, once we kind of get the document, what is our plan to start doing those ad hoc kind of committees or something, and I'll get advice from Dr. Prophet as to what is most effective with some of the other districts that have had them as well.
One thing we do not do, and it goes back to one of those principles that we talked about, is that I will not make recommendations in terms of hiring a consultant or a resource or anything. That is a bias, and there is no way I would ever do that. However, I will help you interpret any of that data. We will look at those recommendations, and we try to customize the recommendations to what we know about Crowley and things. We can do that, but if anyone asks me for a recommendation of where to go or who to buy or what that's not what the purpose of our audit is. Our audit is simply an unbiased kind of thing. Yes, there are people who've done it, and we can suggest, you know, some districts that have done it even in Texas, and you've looked at some of those. But we stay unbiased, and, you know, and none of the curriculum team can ever do any consulting work for you. That's just another part of the audit process, because we have to stay unbiased, and we don't have a vested interest in what you do other than you take the information and be successful. And to a T, all 5 of the team members feel that if any district can do it, you can.
I agree they can. And I will say that I believe you told me that the actual document by the end of next week, correct?
That's what I called,
Okay.
as a matter of fact, the edit is on my doorstep today.
Okay.
So when I get back home tomorrow, I'll start looking at what the editor suggests, get that back in on Monday. They make all the corrections, and then it comes back to you. So they told me they could do that within a week.
So if the board will allow us a little bit of time to just kind of get a plan together, but there may be other questions or comments.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions.
Sure.
Indicate more than a couple. But, when you talk about program effectiveness, I often thought that the school district is a system of feedback, right? Because you can develop programs all day long, but until you get some kind of feedback characteristic, it's a closed loop system, right? Is what I call it.
Yes.
Does the document address, you know, what is cost effective? Take an example, the automotive program. Does it make suggestions, or in terms of, you know, you paid X thousand dollars to put the program in place, what data should you use to measure that?
It does.
It does.
It'll say these are 5, 6, or 7 things you need to think about when you design that kind of system. When we talk about program evaluation, we have like 17 different characteristics, and we'll say, give consideration to these 17 things so that when you put an evaluation system together, are you getting these kind of pieces of information?
Does it also point you to the data sources that we have right now in place, or additional ones?
In the findings, we tell you some of those data sources. In the recommendations, we keep those clean in terms of, we don't say use this data to do this. We say find appropriate data that would give you this information.
And the second question is, you talk about curriculum, is there when I think about it, I think about a pyramid, right? Pyramid starting at the top, the objective is to obviously educate kids, graduate, and all the things we measure at the state level. As you grow the base of that pyramid, there's a structure that points to I call it a flow chart, I guess. You start with, curriculum is built around the flow, which starts from elementary all the way up to high school and so forth. Do you guys talk to a system of flows that, you know, you should be doing this at the elementary, which feeds this into the middle, which feeds this into the intermediate, you know, those type of things?
Yes, we may use some different terms, but that is what when you get into the recommendation, we talk about vertically and horizontally aligned. And we talk about not a stair-step system whereby you go from grade 1, grade 2, to grade 3. We talk about the fact that it's a spiral. And what the students need is wherever they are in their learning, it needs to be a continuous learning path for the students. And some of that data you will see in the actual finding. And then it comes back around in the recommendation where we talk about building those types of systems. But you're exactly correct. It can't be isolated pieces, you know. Language arts, at the first grade level, there are certain key objectives, targets that the students absolutely need to learn, that will always be building. They'll have those every year. Then there are some that will be things that will be just maybe unique to first grade, and they may not have to master them at the same mastery level. But we do talk about the fact that there's some very important learnings that kids need. And if you accept 80% mastery at first grade level, but it's a reading skill that they're going to use at second and at third and at fourth, if you don't keep something in the loop in the process to continue building that 80 to 90 to 100, they'll drop back down and you'll have to reteach it. And sometimes that's what's happening in our curriculum process. So when we give you examples in Standard 2, that's what we're talking about. And that's the piece that I think it's very critical that as the superintendent and the leadership team work around that, if they don't feel that they have the professional understanding, I think they have more expertise than they may think they do. But if they don't understand that building, they may need to attend some sessions or talk to some folks that have built those kind of systems in place. And you've got a lot of people in Texas that have worked on those systems. You've had experience in Fort Worth with that kind of system. Houston ISD did that very same system. So you've got a lot of things in place that will work.
Is that process built from the output? When I say, but when I think about, and I'm asking a question when I make a mistake, but when I think about the things that we have as a product out of high school, right? When you talk about students and where they can go, there's CTE products, right? I call them products as students. I'm sorry. That's just the way I think of it. There's people graduating CTE programs, people graduating athletic programs, fine art programs, you know. And when you start to map those in the certificates or types of subject matters, from elementary all the way up to that subject matter, whichever one you pick should be a flow, is what you're saying.
Exactly.
So unless you create every one of those, for each one of those threads, how do you sort that out? You really have to go, in my mind, you have to lay them all out. And you have to start building from elementary all the way up for that one flow, this, and then see how they map to each other, right?
Well, remember I said it when we looked at the curriculum guides and we looked at the quality, we looked at something called prerequisites.
Yes.
That's what prerequisites are.
Starting
That's
from
those
elementary all the way
building-
to
That's those building skills. Yes, and if they're not there, you don't get the outcomes, you know. It's hard to teach a single skill in isolation until you know what other skills do the students need to know in order to master that one, and that's exactly what you're talking about.
Other questions or comments?
I just have one comment, and it's more like thanks. I do want to thank my colleagues here on the board for even embarking on this process. Because I always kind of find it difficult sometimes to kind of ride the lightning is what I call it, and kind of, you know, examine yourself. And I think it took courage for us as a board, but more importantly for the staff to have to kind of ride that lightning, because you have to be honest, you have to be transparent, and we have to sit here publicly and, you know, talk about our deficiencies, right, and where we need to go and grow. And so I just want to thank everybody for embarking on it and the work that's to come. Because I definitely think if anyone can do it, we definitely have the team and the capacity to do that. So.
And use the expertise of the board, because you got a policy person here that really knows a whole lot about local policies.
Any other questions?
I just wanted, I wanted to echo what Ms. Hall said. And first of all, I have what I'm going to talk to my employees about for Friday. It's neat that I can use
everyone here. But the thing of it is that we're all here. Everyone in here tonight that listened to this received something that we can all be better at. And whether or not you want to take it to heart and make it better, or you want to just say, yeah, you know, I guess we could do better at this. We all do this for one product or one reason, and that's to make a child or grow a child. And I think that, just like Ms. Hall said, I think that we have, starting right now, we have the ability to make CISD not great again, but that's not the right term. I think CISD is great, but we are great. We are great.
You want to be here?
Stop it. But to make CISD even the best. Y'all know what I'm saying. But see, I mean, we all have the ability to tonight go home with the information and say, you know what? That's some good stuff. I'm going to take this home. Let's incorporate all this information. And I mean, all of us, everyone. And I'm really encouraged by this information that we have.
And there's something here called CISD Pride that we picked up everywhere. You know, every teachers want to be better, principals, and that is, and they want to do it for the district, for the students in this district. It's not anything personal to them, it's about the students in the district, and you're exactly right. There's pride here.
Yeah. Y'all know I didn't mean anything.
Okay, so, to echo what has been said, we're ready to roll up our sleeves, we collectively, because it's gonna take all of us to roll up our sleeves and move forward and do what needs to be done. So, rah-rah team. Okay, our next item is superintendent board member comments. Dr. Menard.
Yes, actually, I want to just not only echo what they said, but I do want to acknowledge the people in the audience. We have so many staff members here, we have principals here, and I think that once again, Dr. Prophet, shows you the commitment of not just a leadership team, but it's everybody. And you have the people here who are saying this is important to us, and we're ready to roll up our sleeves. And as we went through it, you saw a lot of head nodding and like almost an anticipation of, yeah, let's do it, you know? And so I just have to say thank you to everybody who was here, because it's not only our administrative staff, we have everybody in this room ready to do what's right. And so I want to thank you for that. I also, as part of the comments, want to say a thank you to the staff. Again, we went through some very difficult times this week with a tragedy in our district. And part of sharing what we consider Crowley Pride, or just a family atmosphere, when this all occurred on Saturday, we were working, Anthony and I were working on crisis plans with Teresa and so forth, and so I said, you know what, let's get a quick meeting together Sunday night just so we can plan what we need to do to support this family who is going through crisis and support our schools who were dealing with the child of this situation. And I said, go ahead and text, 4 people, 5 people, and we'll just meet in my office. Let's do it Sunday evening, so forth and so on. And when we came in for the meeting on Sunday evening, 33 people showed up for that meeting. So the fact that we can text 4 or 5 people and say, please invite anybody you think is going to be impacted by this, and let us all be there for support and for a plan of action, and 33 people show up. So I want to thank the staff for that. Elisa, please thank your staff. It was a very tragic situation, yet at the same time, it does show the family atmosphere and the care that we have, not only for the students in our district, but for their families as well. So I did want to make that note, and thank you to everybody, board members who attended the services today and so forth. So those are my comments.
Okay, thank you. So, we're gonna go now into executive
Yes.
session.
We are not doing 10.2 and 10.5.
Okay, so pursuant to Texas Government Code 551.072, we're going into executive session to consider contractual agreements regarding conveyance of real property and to discuss personally identifiable information about public school students. And 551.074, to discuss the appointment, employment, evaluation, reassignment, duties, discipline, or dismissal of a public officer or employee. And code, government code 551.074, I think I said
Yes,
that.
that's it.
Okay, we are adjourning into executive session at 9:25. Okay, we are back in open session at 10:06 p.m. Okay, regarding contractual agreements regarding conveyance of real property. Is there a motion?
I move that the board approve the bid of $50,000 for the purchase of the property at 800 London Lane.
Okay, we have a motion by Mr. Ray. Is there a second?
I'll second.
A second by Mr. Garcia.
Yes, ma'am.
Vote by show of hands, please. All in favor? Motion carries unanimously. Our next item, discuss, is it 10:04?